It's 182 feet away from where the proposed place is going to be. So we don't believe that parking is an issue. We've made accommodations to, you can put it down, to the amount of patrons that we expect to be able to accommodate. If you allow me, I will describe pretty much how we propose to operate.
Please do.
Thank you. Two main activities. One is a food pantry, where we have established a registration system through our website, www.share-alliance.net. People will go register for one slot of 30 minutes, during which they would be allowed to shop along some of our volunteers in the dining room space. Allow me to show you the dining room space. This is the parish house. 8-3 main dining hall. You can see the shelves. Of course, they're empty right now, but that's where the food will reside. People, if you can go to the
This
entrance.
is currently used as a dining hall
It is.
for members of the church.
For anyone who's hungry and whenever we offer food, and has been in such use since 1952 when it was built originally. The township required that we address issues concerning the floor. For example, there was tiles, broken tiles, asbestos tiles. We, through the proper permits with the state and so on, remediated that situation and laid down a fully new floor for that. So the idea is that patrons will come. Can you get the dedicated entrance? Yes. Patrons. A1. Patrons will come in from a dedicated. The driveway runs this way, so they will park their vehicle or walk. Those who take public transportation will enter through this dedicated entrance and will be held to a holding room, which is adjacent to the main dining hall. A2, this is where they are, we confirmed their registration, and then through an entrance here on this doors, give them access to the main dining hall where they can do the shopping. We will only allow 20 people at one time to prevent parking issues and crowding, quite frankly, to make sure that we have the capacity and the staff power to accommodate the patrons. Okay, so that's the entrance. Item number 2 is a community kitchen. These are pictures of the kitchen as currently is. We purchased new refrigerators and freezers. This is prep surface, the old Vulcan stove. The kitchen passed the health department inspection, by the way. A4 is the exhibit. That's the other side. Go ahead, show that. The other side of the kitchen, where we also purchase a cleaning system. This is the dishwashing cleaning system. So with the kitchen, we propose to we reduced the capacity from the original 50, that was our projection, to 30 per 2 shifts. So one shift at 5:30, 30 people. Then we bid them goodbye, and a second shift at 6:30, 6:45 is invited to come in. Some questions might arise as to what if unregistered people show off. Well, depending on the capacity, whether we have reached capacity or not, if we have reached capacity, we will give them a takeout meal and send them on their way. If we have not reached capacity, we will register them right then and there and accommodate them. All right, so that's the gist of it. This is not unusual. There are 13 different Presbyterian churches in our judicatory that have some kind of food pantry that operates once or twice a week. Judicatory is like the diocese, like a geographical area. Some of the pictures of those churches are part of the application we submitted already. You will notice that many of them have no parking or very limited parking. So we don't think that that should be an impediment to operate either the food pantry or the community kitchen. I think that's the case. The application for variance is fundamentally asking the board to consider on a humanitarian basis the need to feed those in our communities who are experiencing food insecurity. And we have residents, and this is well documented, that make choices every day about whether to fill their tank of their car with gas or buy groceries, or people who split medications because they can't afford both. And so we want to help. Here in the room, you can see a representative of some of the churches that are part and parcel of the Share Alliance. The Reverend Milton Hobbs over there from Antioch Baptist Church, Jim Bover from Renaissance Church, Kristen and Carol and Gloria over there representing the Presbyterian Church. These people are also, and Reverend Harris right here from Antioch Church. Some of these individuals are members of the board of Share. We are all one and the same when it comes to approaching this very necessary ministry. So I highly recommend that the board consider this variance that determine that this is a permitted use, well, historically it is, and allow us to move forward. As I said, we already have a website where registrations are possible. We have collected a number of grants at this point, so there's some money in the bank ready to be used to purchase provisions and food and so on and distribute to the people in need. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend. Questions by the board? Okay, we'll open it for questions.
You want to go first, Steve?
I'm sorry. What are your hours of operation?
Hours of operations?
Yeah.
Okay, so for the food pantry, we are expecting 3 hours once a week after the academy that operates in the same building closes. So somewhere between 4 o'clock and 7, 4 to 7, once a week.
On what day is once a week?
We are still determining which day is best based on traffic, other activities that might be taking place in and around the church. So we're monitoring that actively. I'm leaning towards Friday right now, but that might be an issue for our Jewish patron. I neglected to mention this, but one section of the food pantry will be dedicated to kosher food.
And what percentage of the beneficiaries are anticipated to come by public transportation as opposed to using their own?
That is impossible for me to know. I mean, literally impossible for me to know. Once they start coming, we'll monitor and report, but there is no way of knowing.
Their businesses nearby that would also use the spots that you have earmarked for your people alone.
Businesses are not allowed to park in the church parking lot and in the parish house parking lot.
And do people park there?
They do not. They do park in the street, though.
the same spots that you have marked in the various exhibits that you produced this evening.
Those are church activities. Those were taken Sunday morning, as a matter of fact.
But I mean, it's sort of like a community activity in the sense that anybody could park there, and you're suggesting it would be used for your facility alone.
I don't understand the question.
Could members of the general population, for reasons unrelated to your ministry, park in many of these spots that you have earmarked on those photos?
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with Church Mall. It's a cul-de-sac. It's closed. It's bumped up against 78, right? So the only reason anyone would go to the end of the street where the parish house sits is to conduct some kind of business at the parish house.
And there are
So
no residents who live there in that area?
there are residents in the building, Morris and at the corner of Morris and Church Mall. They do not park there.
They cannot or do not?
They do not, and they cannot, and they should not. And there's a big sign that says reserved for church activities. So
Are there cars that are parked there as there are in the photograph that the gentleman is displaying for the board?
those are Sunday morning worshipers. I took those pictures personally on Sunday morning, this past Sunday morning.
But you're only proposing a Friday afternoon?
For the food pantry, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. They do shed some light on what we're intending to do. It's important. Thank you.
I have a question. First
Yes.
of all, I want to commend you for what you do. I think it's terrific. My only thought is there any overlap of the people coming to the pantry and the people coming to sit down for dinner? And there's going to be a time when there might be 40 or 50 people all there at the same time.
No, we plan to conduct the food pantry on one day and the dining offering, the kitchen, the community kitchen, on a different day.
So they won't overlap.
They will never overlap.
And to confirm, you had 24 spaces in the one image, 14 in the other, 4 and 4. So, but how many people were you looking to have come in? My math is right then, right?
There's about 42, 44 available spaces at any one time.
And you had approximately, how many people? You said only 20 people at one time would be coming.
20 people at one time for a 30-minute slot for the
That's
food pantry.
Do the shopping, and then a different day of the week would be for the
For the
dining.
kitchen, yes, for the dining.
And how many people would be coming then?
30 people for the dining, yes.
And how many volunteers did you say?
We have a roster of about 25 volunteers. We anticipate that about 6 to 7 for each activity will be present,
So about 36 people total.
approximately. We are also asking our volunteers to carpool as much as possible. And we do anticipate that some people who come for the dining offering will be taking public transportation.
And there's no worship going on in any of the churches at that time in that area, correct?
Because I wear two hats, I can actually make sure that we don't overlap. You know, it's like, okay, no, we don't conduct worship, or any of our tenants conduct worship in the days we are planning to conduct these activities.
Thank you.
Are there any other things that the church would be doing, committee meetings of parishioners or congregants, that might occur during the time that your people are servicing the, my terminology, unnourished, because I can't think of any other words?
But that's a pretty accurate word, actually. A lot of people are undernourished, yeah. So the answer to your question is we schedule very, very carefully. I have a master calendar. So let's say our board meets on the first Monday of the month. The board of the church, the First Presbyterian board meets there. But we meet virtually, so no conflict there. The board of the Share Alliance meets on the second Tuesday of the month. again, mixed hybrid type of meeting where these 9 people, maybe 4 are present there and the rest are attending virtually. So because I manage the calendar, I am able to determine, what happens when.
Are there any plans to go to in-persona meetings as opposed to Zoom meetings?
Yeah, of course.
So that your comment is in the present, but potentially not in the future.
But again, what I want to reiterate is because we control the calendar, we can determine when the food pantry and the kitchen will operate that is not overlapping any other activity of the church.
Do I understand you to be saying that this time period, that whatever you earmark, it's going to be completely and solely utilized for the purposes that you're addressing here?
Correct. So, for example, a Thursday evening from 4 to 7, there is absolutely nothing happening in either buildings. And so the parking lots are empty.
Just as a matter of curiosity, is your kitchen kosher?
It is not. And I would love to be able to do that, but that's a different project altogether.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I'm very familiar with koshering laws. I lived in Holland Park for a lot of years while I was in seminary. I kept the Sabbath. I sat Shiva with many friends, unfortunately. And I would love to do it. All we can do at this point is to create a section of the food pantry that will feature kosher food for people to take home. We have the support of Tibet, of Rabbi Rubin and her congregation. Yes.
It may be, you touched upon this, and it may seem obvious or intuitive to a lot, but can you touch upon how feeding the needy is a religious exercise, at least when it comes to
Well, I mean,
Share
at
Alliance?
at the risk of sounding obvious, but, that's our founder thing. He's, at least the Christian church is based on the principle that, the ministry of Jesus Christ, a Jewish rabbi, by the way, who decided it's important to feed the people when they're hungry. So he multiplies fishes and loaves and feeds 5,000 people on a lawn, and there's grass, we're told in scriptures, and that seemed to be the only requirement. There was no permit to be applied to back then, I'm sure. So it is in fact a tenet of our faith, Matthew 25. I can entertain you quoting scripture, the Hebrew scripture, the Christian scriptures as well, but it is part and parcel of what we do as part of our regular religious exercise, and it's widely recognized as a protected activity of a church, and any organization that is derived from church coalitions or churches, organizations, civic organizations that are faith-based as well. The reason why we incorporated the Share Alliance as a separate entity is because we can benefit as a 501c3 entity from grants that are not available otherwise. That was one of the reasons. The second very important reason is to give participating congregations, Antioch and Renaissance Church and others, a stake in this enterprise. So they're members of the board. They can make decisions. This is not just me deciding what to do, but it's a group of people who are motivated by their faith and their concern for their fellow human.
And out of fairness to Mr. Disco, I mean, it sounds like the way you're framing it is that he's denied your request for a CCO, which you're interpreting to mean that he's denying your request to feed the needy. I mean, is that what you're interpreting his actions being?
Well, if we are saying that operating a food pantry and a kitchen is not a permitted use in a church building, in a church activity, then the answer is yes.
You're making that leap, fair. Okay. Now, help me understand this. Right now, you're appealing Mr. Disco's denial of the CCO. You understand that?
Yes, I do.
You were here for the last application, right?
Yes.
And that was an application for a variance. Do you understand that?
Yes, I do.
Can you help me understand why you're not seeking a variance as opposed to appealing Mr. Disco's decision?
Because maybe I don't know enough. I mean, quite frankly. Yes, I mean, would the board consider a variance and waive the parking requirement that requires, according to Mr. Disco's decision, that the parking be on site and allow us to accommodate patrons in the main building of the church, which is 182 feet away, yards. If that is the better way to go, I'm very willing to do that.
And in terms of, I don't know the different, I understand the process as to the difference, what a variance is versus not, but is there a difference that you could, in terms of like public notice or like?
In particular, public notice would be the largest difference. You have to notify every property owner within 200 feet. You have to publish notice. So if any member of the public, as you saw tonight, wants to come in and speak about an application, our ordinance does not require notice for an appeal, so the public is not aware. And the board tonight, because it's only an appeal, has the authority to either uphold the appeal or turn it down. If you were to come in on a variance application, you would have the whole broad range of possibilities of discussing with the board and possibly getting some variances, not others, and that would, of course, be on public notice.
I understand. Thank you for the clarification. I guess my reaction and why the reason why for the appeal is the principle of the matter. Is like how in what context can feeding the poor not be a permitted use? It's just it doesn't compute. So I guess that's what I'm saying. Is there a variance to determine whether that is a permitted or not permitted use?
So the zoning officer's determination was that the zoning ordinance, as it is written, does not allow this use. His denial is not permitted in the GC zone. That's his determination. I'm not saying anything about what the board is saying.
Okay.
His denial of the CCO does not mean that you are not able to come seek a variance for the request that you are making.
For the board to decide that it is a permitted use?
That we can grant relief from the zoning ordinance to allow the use to take place on the property.
In essence, it's an exception. So an appeal is, you're challenging Mr. Disco's decision because you're saying he got it wrong under the ordinance. A variance is saying, I don't care what the ordinance says, I would like an exception, here's why.
Well, there is a matter of principle at stake here, if you may. I mean, if the easy road is a variance, by all means, I'll come back. We'll do whatever it takes to, go through the public notice and everything that's required. But there is a matter of principle at stake here. Are we saying that a church cannot operate a food pantry and a kitchen? Where there are hundreds of thousands of houses of worship all around the country that do that on a constant basis. I'm sorry, I've been difficult here, but
Respectfully, this board can only consider what this ordinance says. What may happen in the Township of Union or in Millburn or in a church 50 miles from here or 100 miles here, it's not relevant to what this board can legally consider. They have to interpret under our zoning ordinance, when it has permitted uses for the general commercial zone, church or other place of worship parish house, Sunday school, church school. I would suggest that what you're suggesting is more akin to a restaurant, which is
I am not.
conditional use.
No. If you
in the
look at
GC zone.
paragraph 2 of that same list in ancillary usages, I think it's called. Let me look that up.
Even if, here's the issue, even if, and I personally do accept that feeding the needy, including the food pantry, is a part of your exercise of your religion. But perhaps the way to get what you're asking for, and this is not about principle, right? It may be internally with you about principle, is to seek, the way to get your win, principle or not, potentially at least is to seek your variance. It's a different story, it's a different presentation, and what you've presented might be strong for a variance. But you have to challenge Mr. Disco's decision under the ordinance based on what the ordinance says. So if you,
But let me ask you,
I'm listening.
just for clarity, and I'm not trying to be confrontational, by the way. That's not at all what I'm trying to do. But just because it's not listed, is it not permitted? Is my question.
That is the law.
Okay.
If a
so-
use is not permitted, if a use is not listed, it is not permitted. That's general law.
When we say church or other place of worship, parish house, Sunday school, church school, what are we including there? There are many things that are not listed and are done all the time.
I can't answer that for you.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Just because it's not in the list of specifically permitted things, but it's part of what the church does on a regular basis, universal. We would all agree that that's part of what churches do, right? Or not? No?
so the church is there. Do you understand that? The church is there. It's just a matter of what you additionally want to use within the four corners of the church and perhaps beyond. And Mr. Disco interpreted and read the plain language of the ordinance in a way, and you would like to challenge that. That's what you're doing, and you're certainly free to do that and continue it. But is there any challenge to Mr. Disco's interpretation? And you may be going down that path right now. Like, what is a church? That's really what you're asking. Answer it.
Yeah. Yeah. Would it please the board if I withdrew the appeal and filed for a variance instead?
I have no objection, Madam Chair.
You're certainly entitled to do that. Yes.
What would get us to the finish line where we can actually serve some starving people? That's the objective.
And I'm sure Mr. Disco will help you with that application. He's done it many times for many applicants. And we look forward, if you're, or with your, pardon me, Madam Chair, but if you're set on withdrawing the appeal and pursuing a variance, we look forward to seeing you in a month or two, probably.
You can work with,
I need the board. Let me consult with my board, please.
okay. Fine. I heard that. Me too, for that matter, and I hate. I never get any better, and if I do well, it's like a freak accident. So why would you continue to do something if you're no good at it? That's kind of the point. I'd just rather go out then, go out for beers or whatever you do. And forget the
May I ask the board to permit one of our board members to ask questions?
Of course.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Before you do, I do need to swear you in.
Sure, I got it.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Could you please state your full name, spell your last name, and give us your home address?
It's Russell Hovland, H-O-V, like in Victor, L-A-N-D, 147 Countryside Drive, Summit, New Jersey.
Thank you.
And I'm a board member with Share Alliance. The question I had for the board is, when I reviewed Appendix A, Section 35 through 14, specific to this issue, it appeared to me that the items mentioned in Mr. Disco's letter, as well as in that ordinance, as it relates to being a church, a place of worship, a parish house, a Sunday school, or a church school, were places. They were buildings. They were not services that were being provided. So I think some of the confusion here is, yes, while we might agree per that ordinance, this is not a permitted use because it's not specifically identified as such in that ordinance that Mr. Disco refers to. But it truly is, just like prayer meetings, just like choir rehearsals, just like workshops that deal with divorce care and grief share. It clearly is a service that you would expect a church or place of worship to provide. So I think the confusion is we believe that it is a service that a church or place of worship would normally be expected to provide and do provide. And this church has provided this service since the early 50s. And I think the problem is we don't know the best route to go because we're talking about services and the ordinance refers to places or buildings. So if it's not an appeal to Mr. Disco's letter and it's a variance that we're looking for because we believe the services is a service that a church would normally or a place of worship would provide, then we'll gladly agree with doing a variance. But I think that's where the confusion is. It's a service versus a place or a building. If you look at all the other, I shouldn't say all the other, a number of that long list of permitted, principally permitted uses, they're actually places or buildings. They really have nothing to do with services. So I just wanted to mention, that's where I think the confusion is. And once again, if it's a variance process that leads us to the end line, we'll gladly withdraw the appeal and go that route. But we thought making this position as an appeal was our best first step. Thank you.
Thank you.
Having consulted with the majority of the board of the Share Alliance, I think we are prepared to withdraw our appeal and come back to the board with a request for a variance. Now, to be clear, the variance is, number one, permitted use, number two, parking exceptions. Am I interpreting this correctly?
So, you would be seeking a use variance for the zone to allow the community pantry and other activities that, and community kitchen. We would have to, you would be requesting, I don't know actually if you'd be requesting a parking variance because we'd have to, there are calculations that are made based on the amount of volunteers during a shift, the amount of patrons that you anticipate coming. So there are certain calculations with respect to what are called the bulk variances, the parking, the ingress, the access, the circulation on site, everything, all of that would have to be part of this application to the board seeking that use variance so that a full determination could be made. And at the time that you would make that application, you would be noticing your neighbors. So understand that when you were coming to the board for that application, there could be neighbors that are in support or in opposition. The board has the right to hear from everybody. It is not any guarantee that it would be granted. It would be a determination by the board with respect to your application.
Well, I was encouraged to see that you granted a parking exemption to the case right before me. And so I'm counting on your better angels, so to speak. By the way, great restaurant. I recommend it. Do visit. Yes.
The food pantry and these food services provided are not provided by the church who's the owner of the property. It's by Share Alliance, who's a tenant of the church.
Yes. The answer to that is yes. However, the Share Alliance is an extension of the ministry of the Presbyterian Church, of Antioch Baptist Church, of Renaissance Church. So it's a church activity, just coming together under one umbrella, because simply put it, the Presbyterian Church doesn't have enough volunteers.
Right, no, understood. I'm just saying this, that you may want to also look into what the requirement is, because that is a tenant of, which is not currently, I don't know how that situation exactly works out, but. there's
When
more.
you obtain the application, our board secretary and Mr. Disco can help you through it. I think that it would just be if the Share Alliance is the applicant, the owner of the property would be consenting to the application, which
Certainly.
it sounds like you would be, so.
Yes.
But they could help and assist you in walking through that application.
Okay.
And just a suggestion, I think it's a requirement, candidly. Corporations need to appear with counsel, so when you do your variance, when you appear, hopefully you'll have an attorney with you for your variance.
Okay. I was, quite frankly, trying not to spend the money. I'm saying it like it is.
No, I respect that.
We
And then-
thought the funds we have for the Share Alliance are better used to feed people
Yeah.
rather than lawyers.
I-
No
I
offense to
agree.
anyone.
No, I agree, and I'm a lawyer.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I'll leave it at that.
Anything else that I need to know? What is the next step from you? Or? All right. Any action that needs to be taken at this point, Madam Chair?
No, I mean, with a withdrawal, there's no action that the board would need to take at this time.
Okay.
So,
I
Thank
thank
you.
you for your attention and for the consideration.
yes, we will see you soon. Motion to adjourn.
Second. Very nice to meet you.
All right, for it.
This was fun?